integrated both in their minds and in their life. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I just started recording. So everybody, welcome to this coaching call, and for the Tuesday 8 Weeks to Wellness Docs. I know you're probably listening to this at a later time. So I am on the webinar here with Dr. Barry Anderson, and as I said, Barry's coming to Philly this weekend, which I'm totally excited about. We got 38 docs coming to boot camp, and I've said this from stage, guys. I said it down in San Antonio. I will never have somebody on a webinar, or I will never have somebody speak on my stage that I don't personally know and I don't personally use in practice. And I'm really honored to say that Barry has been a huge part of our process. Barry and Dan, a huge part of our process. As I was just speaking with Barry, I was talking about 2 8 Weeks to Wellness clients that have just kicked butt. They were in today for their post-evals. Easy sign up for continuing care, and I'm not talking it was like a couple $100, it was a couple $1,000 for both of them. But it all started with them closing into care, and that happened 8 weeks ago when they started 8 Weeks to Wellness. And I dare say, and I know Denise, if she was on the line, she would agree, that we are much better closers. And I don't care how good your product is. I think we have an excellent product in terms of 8 Weeks to Wellness when somebody commits to do the program. But the bottom line, guys, if they don't commit and pay you and sign on the dotted line and start the program, then nobody benefits. They're not going to be able to experience the product in 8 Weeks to Wellness, and certainly you're not benefiting because you're frustrated that you have a client or a patient who needs the program that never committed to it. So, having Barry on the webinar here to really teach us what are the subtle nuances that allow people to close, to commit to care. I think it's a huge value add, and Barry, I really appreciate being on the webinar.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Glad you asked me.
Cool. So let's jump in here. Barry, I threw a couple of things in here, and I just want to throw this out there because, I was thinking about what's the value that Everest has brought to this process of 8 Weeks to Wellness for us. And, I came up with this. How do we get patients to want what they need? And what I mean by that is, patients come in and they have their own set of wants. I want to get out of pain. I want to get rid of my headaches. And, Barry, you taught me this a long time ago, and I absolutely love this quote, is to give people what they want but show them what they could have. And I think one of my fatal flaws, Barry, before I met you, is I wanted to jump right to showing people what they could have and not really honor what they wanted. And so now I really feel like in the past year, and now this will be my third boot camp, what boot camp has allowed me to do is to embrace what people want, and give them what they need and show them what they need and get them to commit to not only what they want, i.e. they came in, like I had a new patient today, she came in with lower back and hip pain, but when I ran her wellness score, her waist's 43 inches, the woman can't squat, she's full of subluxation, degenerative arthritis. So what she wants is to get out of pain, but what she needs is to get under chiropractic care and start changing her lifestyle. And so the Everest process in day 1, day 2 has really taught me how to take a person's wants and how to take my needs and complement them so they commit to a longer-term care plan of really what they need. So, Barry, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but that's a summary for me.
Sure, yeah. It's interesting that you brought that up because, we talk a lot about value. And really to understand a patient's true issue as to why they're in your office, you have to bring them to a deeper understanding of how you're the solution to the problem. And I think one of the things that I guess in a way I don't follow in the chiropractic world is everyone says it's not about you, and really it is about you because they need to see that you're the solution to their problem. Otherwise, they can do what? They can go grab an Advil. They can do whatever they want. But your job when they come into your office is to put the information together in a way that creates a value that will create a coherent and compelling exchange of value. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then we want that value as it relates to the patient's value system, not yours. So oftentimes, we'll mistakenly push a patient into the doctor's personal value system while we're ignoring the patient's value system. And so in a sense, what we're doing is we're selling them what we want to sell them, not what they're ready to buy. Now that doesn't mean you're never going to sell them wellness or anything else like that. It just means that the moment they come into your practice, that may not be where they're at in terms of the buying cycle. And because they're not there, and because we want to say, well, I'm a wellness doctor, and that's my real or perceived value, that's all I can sell this person, well, that may not be a high value for that person, for the patient at this very minute. So the minute you start pushing them down to sell them what you want, you start to lose the deal. And it's a very delicate dance that you have to go with here to actually make this a relationship that works.
Yeah, and speaking of, no, it totally makes sense. But I think one of the things I'm trying to get at is what Everest has taught me is that, let's face it, Barry. People come in and let's say they have this woman this morning who had lower back and hip pain. She wants to get rid of her problem in as few visits and pay the least amount of money that she possibly can. That's what she wants. Now what she really needs, obviously, is very different than that because her problem has been there for decades. So what she needs is obviously to stay under chiropractic care for a lot longer. And that initial phase of care, and with Everest it's 3 months, that's not always what I think they come in thinking, well, I'm going to be under care for 3 months. So it's the burden of proof is upon you to show them why they need 3 months of care at $2,500.
Sure, right. Yeah, exactly. That all comes from what? From value creation, right?
Correct.
Yeah, the more value you create, the more they're going to see where they need to be. So.
And this is, and I added this too, Barry. I just want you to comment. Okay. One of the things I read, and I forget who the author of the book was. Maybe who was it? I forget what book I read, but they talked about buyer beware, which is obviously caveat emptor to seller beware. And I kind of like that these days because we have to be knowledgeable in terms of being able to overcome people's objections. So it's not the buyer that's coming in, and they have to be more concerned. We have to be concerned in terms of really understanding what our level of communication should be and how do we bring people up the ladder so that they get to a point where they're ready to close. And I think this is particularly important for us, Barry, because, I think chiropractic, I know chiropractic, being a third-generation chiropractor, has always had a credibility issue. So people come in already with one eyebrow a little bit raised because we're chiropractors. Not everybody, but I think that the general population does. And so we have to assume the buyer doesn't believe what we say and only what we show them. And that's one of the things I love about the motion study. It's also one of the things I love about the wellness score is that we've got to stop telling people what to do and we've got to start showing people what to do.
Well, that's an important point in the selling process is that people believe what they see, not what they hear. And so when you can show them the wellness score, or we can show them a motion study or something like that, that fits who they are and what they are, then they're going to believe it. But I think it was so powerful about the wellness score that you got your patients doing, and I touched on this briefly in San Antonio. It fits the paradigm belief system that the public already has. When the public goes to the medical doctor, whatever they do, they base it off of what? Off of measurements and blood work and scales and all these other things that you use, and that fits their belief system. It's not like you're moving them into a new paradigm and saying, let me teach you about this whole new concept, and you just have to go with a leap of faith with me. You can change their belief system by already using the paradigm they currently believe in, which I think is why you have so much success with what you're doing, because you can actually show them, and they will always buy that as being a credible experience versus you just telling them.
Yeah, and what I say, Barry, is people can argue with my thoughts and my words, but they can't argue with their own numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so it's a powerful thing. And then the other thing too, Barry, and I know that you touch on this a lot, but until I met you, I would let this one go. But I would hear a lot of chiropractors when they don't close a person or when they can't get a person to commit. Instead of assuming responsibility for that, they blame it on the patient. That patient didn't get it. And I rarely, it's funny, I never really did that. I always used to think, well, what the hell did I do in the process to not make them understand the true value of what I wanted them to understand? So touch on that for just a minute when you hear chiropractors say my patient doesn't get it.
Well, what I find that to be when the patient doesn't get it, it means the chiropractor doesn't know how to communicate properly the message. I mean, our message isn't that earth-shattering. Pressure on a nerve, going to have a problem. Who doesn't understand that? And if I take pressure off the nerve, it can only work better. That's not a difficult concept for people to get. The problem is we convolute the message so much, and we start the message too early in the sales process to where they start to tune you out. Because what happens is if you hit someone with a new idea early on in your relationship, before they even really know who you are, you're actually creating a fear within the patient. And then what's going to happen here, anytime there's fear, there's uncertainty. And then along with uncertainty, that could lead to either a real or perceived pain that the patient may ultimately encounter by having a dealing with you. And that's oftentimes why they're just going to say, you know, I'm out of here. And we like to say they didn't get it. They get it. It's just that the way that you presented it caused the problem. And in a sense, what you've done is you scared them off because you totally upended their paradigm belief system too soon in the relationship.
That's brilliant. And then the other thing I love that you talk about is the informed buyer versus the uninformed buyer. And the kind of the thing I get out of this is the informed buyer is making a logical decision, where the uninformed buyer is making an emotional decision. And so where we need to we need to provide data so that people make the right decision. Now, I've always believed that people do make decisions based on emotion, but you want to make sure that you're bringing forth the right emotion based on logic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, if you can put the two together, that's I think the secret sauce, if you will. You know, so because the emotion is why they buy. Oftentimes what happens is people in the buying cycle will decide very early on whether or not they're going to buy from you. Typically it's within the first couple of minutes, according to the research. And then what they do for the rest of the time they're with you is they're justifying the reason they made the decision, whether, you know, to buy from you, or why they like you, or whatever, or why they don't like you, whatever that may be. And so they're trying to justify after that point. And oftentimes we screw the deal there too, because we're all over the map, and we're not letting them use the logic to justify why they had that emotional immediate liking to us.
Yeah, and it's such a great point, Barry. And I don't know if anybody else on the webinar feels this way. And Barry, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but I would have to say before I started coaching with Everest and really starting to wrap my brain around this, I never really got a sense after day one of whether somebody was going to buy from me, somebody was going to commit to care. And I can tell you almost with absolute certainty, and I had a new patient this morning, I know this woman's buying from me when she comes back in on her report of findings. I just know it because I can feel it. It's a gut feeling. So it kind of validates what you were saying, is that you know at the end of your day one whether someone's going to buy from you just based on the experience they had.
And I think you know too right now, because if you follow the appropriate system of communication, you know, you're not guessing, you're not hoping, you just know it's going to happen because it has repeated itself over and over, because the system always works as long as you create that pattern, what I call that momentum selling, where you're getting these patterns of yeses as you're going through the day one or even the day two, where they're just with you the whole way. It does make it almost I think at the end you can almost say to somebody, have you made a decision today whether or not you're ready to buy? And majority of the time they'll say yes if you do it right.
Yeah, and to that point, Barry, the woman who was in today, the new patient, I was so and convinced she's going to buy. But not only that, as I walked her up to schedule her day two, and her husband was there, and she said, "Walt, get over here. You're making an appointment." So, she was so committed, and I knew she was going to buy. But not only did she want to buy from me, she wanted to make sure that her husband got in, and he bought from me too. Which is pretty awesome.
Yes, that's incredible. That means you did an amazing day one, right?
Yeah. Well, so talk about some closing requirements here. So,
sure. One of the requirements is that the patient must want it, and what I mean by want it is everybody that comes in, you have to assume they want to get better, but they may not want your way of getting better, and that's why it's so important to find out, where they're at and get into a communication with people so that you can ultimately get them to see that you're the answer. But they've actually got to want it, and they've got to believe in you. And one of the best ways for them to believe in you is through the certainty that you're doing that day one. It's A, B, C, D all the way through the whole thing. It's not on some patients I go A, B, C, and on some patients I go A, Z, 3. And that's the problem a lot of chiropractors have, is they try to fit or change each thing that comes through, and that will ultimately kill the deal, because you're starting to unearth some unbelievability in you, which you don't want. Mm-hmm. Of course, the people they need you. They must need you. And now they have to be able to afford it. Now, when I say that, and I think that's where a lot of chiropractors make a mistake, is they think they must be able to afford it means I should lower my price. And that's not what it means. What it means is you have to be there to create so much value that they'd be willing to part with their money and give it to you to fix the problem. And unfortunately, what's going on right now in the profession is everybody's trying to win the low price game. And I don't understand why you would want to win that, because you're, number one, you're devaluing the product, but number two, what you're doing is you're making it very difficult to pay your bills every month.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to make it so there's enough value that they're willing to part with their money for you. Mm-hmm. And then they have to understand it. Sometimes when chiropractors go through their day one, day two, even as a chiropractor, I get confused. I mean, I'm listening to it and I'm thinking, golly, how can someone without an education in healthcare know what you're talking about? Because even I'm like, what are you talking about, man? And so you have to put it in a way that they totally understand. And this one may seem like a silly one, but you've got to be eager to make the sale. Sometimes what happens is we're doing a great day one, day two, whether you're doing orthos, neuros, whatever you're doing, and you're doing a great job, and then you get to the point to where you have to say, okay, here's what it costs you, or I need you to commit to the time. And we go into a retreat for some reason at this point. And the reason we go into the retreat is because we want to be liked. And because we want to be liked, we end up compromising our values or compromising what's right for the patient. And so we're not truly eager to close the deal because of this weird thing about wanting to be liked. You don't need to be liked. What you need to be is respected. And your program has to fit what that patient needs. You can't change it just so you can make for ease of the sale, which is a huge mistake. And then, of course, you got to know how to close the deal, which, again, that's what we do at boot camp. We teach you how to close the deal. But the close, I talk about it in my talk. Close is only 10% of what you're doing,
right.
But that 10% represents all your money.
Right.
If 90% of what you're doing is perfect, but 10% at the close, when you're ready to have them sign on the dotted line and become a chiropractic patient, they don't do it. It doesn't matter how much purpose you have, how much tick you've got. None of that matters because you didn't get them to close for chiropractic.
Right. And a couple of things that you said, Barry, is so true. Is that they must need you. Well, one of the things I think with that I've learned from you guys is that you can also, through your languaging and your communication, create a sense of urgency where their level of need goes way up. So there's a difference between just thinking I need you and knowing that I better frickin' get this taken care of.
Yeah, and sometimes in the profession, people they look at that almost as if it's unethical to do that, and I don't understand that thought process. We're not saying make it an urgent need out of not from an ethical standpoint, but I think everyone online would agree with me. If someone has a subluxation and I don't correct that subluxation immediately, it will get worse. I mean, I don't think there's any argument there. And I think if somebody has degeneration and I don't immediately get in there, every minute I'm not in there doing chiropractic care on that spine is a minute they're moving closer to degeneration, closer to the medical community, and closer to the big pharmaceutical companies. And so to me, I have to create a sense of urgency. Not only do you need to buy it, but you need to buy it now, because if you leave my office, you're going to make a bad decision, and that decision is typically, I'm going to go see my medical doctor, and I'm going to handle it through drugs and surgery. So you do have to create a need, and there has to be urgency in that need.
Absolutely. And then the other thing, too, is I think a lot of times in terms of chiropractors making it believable and understandable for patients is that when you don't have a system, like I have a ironclad system of my day one and day two. I think there's a lot of times when you don't have a reproducible system, and I call it scripting the critical moves, Barry. That's why I think 8 Weeks to Wellness is such an awesome program, because we script out to the detail everything they're going to be doing on 8 weeks, from their adjustments to their exercise to what they're eating, and lo and behold, we get a great outcome. But I think when chiropractors don't script their day one and day two out to know exactly what they're doing at every point along that patient experience, then they start talking out their rear ends, because they don't. Yeah. They're like, where am I in the process? And then they just started grabbing for words, and it makes absolutely no sense. And I've heard that from many day twos when a chiropractor is doing a report of findings. I'm thinking that didn't even make sense, and I think it's because they haven't scripted those critical moves out for themselves.
Yeah, and scripting isn't a bad thing. I mean, it gives you a template off of which to work. And a lot of chiropractors, they're really afraid of the scripting, or they don't like the scripting, or they think that patients will think that they're scripted. Well, it's the first time the patient's ever heard it. It doesn't matter if you've said it 1,000 times. You just want to have that, like you said, that scripting down, and so that you know where you're going, so the believability can skyrocket. Otherwise, yeah, you're just talking out your butt, like you said.
Right. So talk about some of the obstacles to the close, Barry. Some of the things that
one of the big obstacles that many chiros do is they prejudge the patient's ability to close. We make a decision whether or not they can afford the care or whether or not they can take the time to do it, and it's not based off anything. It's based off of our feelings. We don't really know what someone makes or doesn't make, and we don't know how much time someone has. Sometimes people say, I have no time to do this, and they're patients who never miss a visit. But see, what you have to do is, the mantra that I always say is, you do what you do, your fees are your fees, your recommendations are your recommendations. And if you follow those three things, and just when you sit down with a patient and not prejudge, and you just do what you do, what you find more often than not is they close and they become a patient. And then the other one would be a lack of sincerity, and this occurs when you're thinking more about the money than the good you're doing for the patient. If you just think about the good that I'm going to do for the patient, the money is going to come. Unfortunately, sometimes if we're insincere, we're focused purely on the money, and that long-term doesn't work out. Short-term, it's great. Long-term, you're going to have a very difficult career, and you could ruin your reputation in the community. The other one is you don't want to be on a different wavelength than your patient, meaning if a patient is, let's say you're coming in and the patient's got a hot disc, I'm a guy with a herniated disc, and when I herniated initially, I had ice picks sitting in my hip and in my calf, and I was, out of 0 to 10, I was probably 100 in terms of pain. And if I came in and this doc was all full of pep and energy and excitement, that's the wrong wavelength, man. I don't want anything to do with you. You're not getting it. I'm dying here in pain, and you're over here being all up with people. That's not going to work. So you have to really work on the wavelength of where you're at with that patient. And then if you have just a terrible day 1, day 2, that's going to have an effect on your close, because you don't know how to do the day 1, day 2. How could they ever want to buy from you? And then the last thing is you have to learn to shut up. Chiropractors love to talk. Chiropractors talk way too much, especially when it comes to the money. When you present the finances and after you say, which one works best for you, you've got to be quiet, because the minute you speak, you're done. And you're going to hear, after you present the money, if you speak, before the patient, you're going to hear, let me go home and think about it. Because you're shutting down a part of the brain that the patient is using to make a buying decision, and it doesn't turn back on. They just want to get out of the environment. So it's very important that you just be quiet. It's okay. You don't have to always be talking.
I always say in my day 1, day 2, I think my favorite statement is, which one works best for you. It's something I never used before, Barry, and let me tell you, it works when you just, which one works best for you, and you shut up. They make a decision.
Yeah, it's a great line. I love that line, But so the goal, you want to create a desire and urgency for your care, so that they want to pay you now and not later. And the better your day 1, day 2, the greater the desire and the urgency there is for them to ultimately pay you. And so if you learn how to close people, you're never going to be without patience. And if you're never without patience, then obviously you're never without money. And sometimes people, because I end up talking a lot about money at a lot of our things, and sometimes people get turned off by that. But remember, your money, it will help drive your value system. So if you have a highly ethical, moral value system, and there's things you want to do with that you can do good with, then why not have a lot of it? Our good friend Mike Southwick, right? Wonderful guy. And what does he do? He's got his 10% going to the church. He donates to different charities. He does great things with all the money that he makes. So it's okay to talk about money and focus on money as long as it's driving a principled value system. Where we run into problems is when we don't have those principles, and we don't have that value system, then money can be a real problem. But I say get as much of it as you can, because you can do a boatload of good with it, and that's how I look at it.
Yeah, and I think, I just want to go back to the one point you made, the better your day 1, day 2, the greater the desire and urgency for people to pay you. And again, I just want to use this as a real-life example, guys, and you'll understand this as an 8 Weeks to Wellness doc. But, the woman today, one of my favorite questions, Barry, as you know, is a life effect question, which I think creates a much greater sense of urgency of why somebody needs to be under your care. And when I asked her the life effect question, her name was Connie, and I said, hey, Connie, most people don't come into our office because they have lower back pain and hip pain, which is what she was suffering from. They come because that lower back pain and hip pain is affecting them or limiting them in some way, either partially or totally. So I need to know, how has this affected your life? And she went on, Barry, I can't exercise anymore. I like to garden, and I can't get down on my hands and knees. And, so that question is a question that I never used to ask, and it's created such a great conversation piece to not only say that, yeah, you have pain, and that's a pain in the ass, literally, but look at all the things that you can't do anymore. And the fact of the matter is, woman was severely overweight because she's not exercising. She has no desire in her life, she told me. It's like, I just don't feel like I have a desire for living anymore, and it's like, man, think about that in terms of a life effect.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about, creating the urgency and the need is you're no longer the back pain doctor, are you? You're the doctor that can give her everything that she wants in her life, and that's what's so important about asking the appropriate questions, because you can shift a paradigm without really having to beat someone over the head or make them feel silly about the belief system that they had. You could take that woman from chiropractic is back pain to chiropractic is giving her everything she wants in her life. You create a whole different animal there in terms of a patient,
Oh, no doubt. So let's just briefly go through this, and then Barry, I want to jump into some of the objections and complaints that, and I also want to ask some of our docs, what are some of the common objections, so maybe you can help them with those.
Okay. 10 reasons you blow the clothes. You never attempt it. You think pressure is a bad thing. You can't deal with the emotions, and usually that means you can't deal with someone not liking you. There's a lack of belief that you have what they need. You have to be, just firm in your principles of chiropractic, and that is the answer for somebody. You're making an incorrect effort, meaning you're closing it for the wrong reason. You're trying to be reasonable, meaning you'll wax and wane on your recommendations or on your fees or different things like that. You don't know how to handle the money in a way that makes somebody actually understand what you're doing, which is a huge problem in the profession. We complicate the handling of the finances, which is why people have to leave and think about it. If you handle a complaint as if it was an objection, I think we'll be talking about that later. And if you don't have enough closing options, and those are reasons that many of us, other than the fact you have a terrible day one day too,
Right.
or you don't know how to create value, that you'll blow the close.
Yeah, or you don't know how to handle objections. And, my uncle taught Denise and I a long time ago, one of my favorite lines is, you got to be willing to lose the deal to make the deal. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of chiropractors who aren't willing to lose the deal because they want to be liked.
Well, sometimes it's that, and sometimes it's they're afraid to lose the deal because they're hurting so much.
Yeah.
But rather than go and learn, whether it be 8 weeks to wellness or how to overcome objections or whatever, or rather than learn a new system to get you out of that, what they do is they just keep operating out of fear, and then they never grow, and it's sad.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about some of the rules to close.
Okay. Rules: always be seated. You never want to stand when you're actually wrapping up the deal. Always make eye contact. Even if they say no, you got to smile at them. It's okay. Always agree. That's the first rule of selling: is always agree with them, even when they say something crazy. It's okay. Because that's what's going to allow you to form the relationship. Because I talk about it all the time. You want to be with people that you agree with, not people that you disagree with. And this is a huge mistake that a lot of chiropractors make. If someone comes in with a belief system that medicine is good, flu shots are good, vaccinations are good, and on our day one, within 10 minutes of meeting someone, we like to tell them, you're not real smart. I can't believe you would believe something like that. Let me show you the way. Not a good way to start a relationship, and what you're going to find is they won't come back for the day two, and more often than not, they just want to get out of the office, and they won't be back. Or if they do close, they're leaving soon, you have a low retention. You want to have multiple closing options. Always be positive. Always treat people like they can, meaning it doesn't matter who they are. It could be a homeless person that comes in your office. Treat them like they can. It's just the right thing to do, and you'll be surprised at what happens to your close rate when you treat everybody as if they can. You always want to look for a solution, and then you want to care so much that you refuse not to close them. And if you go in there with that attitude, you're gonna do much better in the closing cycle.
Yeah, and let me talk about that real quick, Barry. I shared this story with you, and it's a very kind of emotional, personal story to me. But I had a patient that didn't close back in March, who a month and a half later died of a massive heart attack in Florida when he was supposed to be on his buddy's 50th birthday celebration. He had a massive heart attack and died. And the reason, is because he didn't close in the 8 weeks to wellness, and that's what I had recommended. And I think about that, and that just doesn't happen anymore because I care so much now that every time I have a patient who I know needs the program and who it's going to save their life, I think about Jeff and think, I got to care so much that I've got to insist that this person do 8 weeks to wellness, because if not, their life is at stake. And the great thing, Barry, is to have the objective data in their wellness score to literally know that.
Yeah, and if everybody in the profession had that attitude, we wouldn't have a 2% market share, would we? I mean, we would own healthcare. And then, what you just said at the end was so important for you to truly believe, what you have and that you're doing the absolute right thing for the patient. What better way than a wellness score? Right? Because like you said, you can measure it and you know where you're taking them, and it's not just I feel good. You can show them everything, which is incredible.
Yeah, and then the other thing about is the first rule of selling, something personal story now. When my wife asks me, do you like these pants or do you like these shoes, I always go into agreement. And the night always seems to go better, Barry.
Yes, it does.
Do you like these shoes? Well, not really.
Yeah, you're in trouble if you do that.
Yeah. All right, so let's before, and I want to open this up to everybody, because we always on our coaching calls, Barry, we give people an opportunity to ask questions. And what I would like you guys to do is to start thinking about objections to why people don't close into 8 weeks to wellness. I want you to think about what are the most common objections. Is it time, money? Barry's here as an expert. Throw your objections at him so he can help you with them. But before we go over that, Barry, I wanted you to cover the difference between an objection and a complaint, because I never really knew this until you taught me.
Well, a complaint is something, it's just a complaint. You don't want to handle a complaint as if it's an objection. If you handle a complaint as if it's an objection, you're giving it value, which you don't want to do. So an example of a complaint is, doc, that's a lot of money. That's not an objection. Saying that's a lot of money is like saying it's hot outside, mm-hmm. or this soup is too salty. That's just a complaint. All right, mm-hmm. and what you have to do is you ignore it. And so if let's say someone said, well, that's a lot of money, you just go, yeah, I know. So which way works best for you? Right. But that's a lot of money. Yeah, I know it is. But which way works best for you? It's not an objection. You'll see the difference when we get into objections a little bit later. But what you have to do, so if you want, you can go into an agreement if they keep hammering it. Let's say they keep saying that over and over and over. Well, then at that point, it could be taken as an objection. So then you would handle it, and you would say, I agree. It is a lot. Remember, you want to go into agreement with them, and then you would follow it up with, but that's what's required to fix the problem. And if we could get it done for anything less, we would. So why don't we just get started and get this thing done so you can pick up your kid again and not miss work. And so, but the first thing you have to understand is a complaint is a complaint. Let it go. No big deal.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. So, maybe let's cover a couple of the more common ones. And what I did, Barry, if you didn't mind, because you covered a lot of objections in your PowerPoint. So I went through and picked out the ones that I think are probably the most common objections that we see in practice. So let's just go through a couple of these to think about it, because I think this is probably one of the most common ones is, get to your close, you present it, they need 8 weeks to wellness or the 3-month care plan. So, well, why don't I just take this home and think about it?
Yeah, and I want to think about it as a common one. And again, you want to go into it, in a sense, in a bit of agreement with them. So I always say, you would say, well, I understand, I'm with you, or I understand, I agree, I like to think about things too. It's important that you do that. And then you would say, well, however, thinking about it isn't going to change the fact that, as you told me earlier, this is something you need to do. Now, we know this from the way that we set up the day one. We talked during the day one where the patient actually either says that exact thing to you or is circling around it so much that it's a true statement. But this is something they need to do. And so you're going to need to do it either sooner or later. And you would ask that as a question. So you would say to them, and would you agree with me that you're going to need to do this sooner or later?
Yes.
They have to say yes here. Yes. And then you would say, so why don't we just get it done so you can think about the other things in your life that need your attention? And again, now they'll go along with you into the closing process.
Right. And it certainly is better than saying okay, which is what most chiropractors say when people want to say, I just want to think about this. Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you let them go home to think about it, how can any question be answered? Whatever it is that they need to think about, There's only one person who can answer that question, and it's you. And so I always talk about, we spend all our time, energy, and money really trying to drive people into the practices, and then once we get to the point to finally wrap it up, we say, okay, go home and think about it, where there's no one there to help make the sale. The only thing that could happen is the sale gets sabotaged because they're going to do what? They're going to go home and put on the TV, or they're going to talk to the spouse, or they're going to talk to the friend, and someone's going to talk them out of the deal. Mm-hmm. Handle it right then and there and be done with it.
Yeah, I've heard this language as the law of diminishing intent. Is the more time that you put between, the decision to buy and actually buying, the less likely people are to buy.
Oh, that's pretty good. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, law of diminishing intent. Trent Camp taught me that one. I really like that one. How about the spouse stall? I hear I need to talk to my spouse.
Yeah, there's a few different ones on the spouse stall, but we'll do this one that you've got up here. You would say, well, I want to go home and talk to my wife, and you would say, well, is your wife going to say no to you getting this corrected so you can keep suffering? What is the vast majority of people going to say at this point?
No.
They're going to say, yeah, exactly. Then you would just say, well, I agree, so why don't we just get started? Now, it could be that you say, is your wife going to say no to you getting this fixed so you keep suffering? Well, she might. Then you would have now you know what's going on. So now you have to really unearth what it is that, because the wife isn't, or the husband isn't saying no because they want you to suffer. We all can agree with that, right? I mean, if you have any form of a relationship, what they're saying no to is that they know it's going to take time, energy, or money.
Right.
And so we always know what it really is. So then you would say, would he object to you getting this corrected, or the money? It's always the money.
Right.
So then you would go into, so what about the money? Is it the total cost or the payment? And now you can find out what it is. It's always going to be the cost. And then now you have care credit or put it on their own credit card or whatever, but you want to spread the payment out then.
This is my personal favorite, so go over this one.
All right, the other one is, so I want to go home and talk to my wife. I agree, you should. But if your wife is anything like mine, she never says no to something that I truly love or truly need, and I do the same thing for her. So do you think she's going to say no to you finally getting rid of this problem so that you can work and enjoy your family?
No.
Well, I didn't think so. So why don't we just get started? And if for some reason she says no to you getting this better and keeping your job, then we'll tear this up as if it never happened, but at least we're ready to get started. When I say we'll tear this up, what I mean by that is, I've already set them up into a calendar. They've committed into the care of the time, because you always handle time before you handle money. So what I want to do is I want to let them know, if for some reason your wife goes home and she says keep suffering, well, fine, then we'll tear this up, never existed, we're good to go. What they do at this point when I say that is they say, well, she's not going to say that. And I go, yeah, I know.
Right.
So let's just get started and be done with it. So it's almost a double close here by getting them to say, well, she's not going to do that, she's not going to do that.
Right. We want to
okay. Yeah, we kind of covered this one on the first one, but sure. we can blast through it, or do you want to move to a different one?
Yeah, let's move to a different one here. Let's go over the payment closed, and then we'll open this up to questions.
All right. So a lot of times, chiropractors, they're afraid to present the big number. It's going to be $2,000, it's going to be $3,000, whatever your case fee is. That's fine. Sell it on payment. Everything in the world is sold on payment. I mean, if you think about how you go through your life, and even if you watch TV, what do they say for the 50-inch TV? For as little as $10 a month, right? When you went and bought your car, you bought it on payment. You walked in and you didn't say, I'm looking for a $90,000 car, did you? You walked in and you said, hey, can you keep my payments around this number? We go in thinking payment. Yet oftentimes with our patients, when they come in to buy from us in terms of care, we sell the big number.
Right.
Which doesn't make sense, because the buying public buys off of payment. So you might as well sell it off of payment. So you would say things like, so by using care credit, if it's okay in your state, the cost of your care can be as little as $120 a month. Or, now this next or is what we call reducing to the ridiculous. You would say, or as little as $4 a day. And so for the price of a Starbucks a day, you can pick up your kid and enjoy your time with them. So why don't we just get started? And that's based on if you had a $2,100 case for your 3 months of care.
Yeah, and so for example, for 8 weeks to wellness in our office, Barry, it's I believe $2,360 if people prepay or $2,700 up front. And I have to tell you, I this is not a common objection that I get, because I would say 90% of people prepay, and I know you call it the middle number the way that you present it, but I know that you experience the same thing. And again, I think it's if you create so much value and so much sense of urgency in your day one, day two, people are going to want to get it corrected, and they're going to understand that there is value in prepaying, especially if you're giving them a discount.
Yeah, and then especially too when you reduce it down like that and you break it down to the payment, they're not thinking that big number anymore. They're just thinking, I could swing that. I tell the story, of the patient asked me, are you asking me, do I spend more than $5 a day on stupid things? And I
Right.
said, yeah, you do. And that's, she signed up right away because it made sense to her then.
So what I want to do, Barry, if you don't mind, I'm just going to open this up to some of our docs and just go down the line here and see if anybody has any questions. Let's see. Carolyn, you're first. Carolyn O'Hare, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Carolyn, any questions, comments?
No questions, just a comment. I really enjoyed how to keep your mouth shut, that stops the buyer's brain process and you lose the sale. I like hearing that.
Yeah, that's something I never did before, Everest, and I have to tell you, it works. It's just which one works best for you, and shut up. And sometimes it's a long, uncomfortable pause, but I would say 9 times out of 10, they pick a number.
Yeah, it's really important to understand that. I can't drive that home enough. And the thing is, Carolyn, with the being quiet, is it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because when they're really thinking about it, it's you want to talk because it's so uncomfortable sometimes. But you just have to stick to your guns and understand that if I do speak, I'm really going to mess something up here. So, yeah, you don't want to do that.
Joe Tilley, can you hear me, buddy?
I can hear you, buddy. How you doing?
Good. Barry, this is our English doctor that I'm trying to get over to in Everest, or we're going to have to go over there and do Everest over in England.
I broke bread with Joe, didn't I?
Yeah, we did. We met
in Philly.
Yeah, that's right.
That was
That's
cool.
right. When you came up to do the 8WW presentation.
Yeah, great guy, great wife. Yeah, you guys are awesome.
Hey. Yeah.
Oh, hey, how are you?
We're great, thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Doing great.
Awesome presentation. I loved it. I've got 2 questions, really. I need to man up, first of all, and get on with the think about it question, because I'm so weak when it comes to the think about it. So I've got to do that properly. But if they do escape on that second visit, if they do get away, what's the follow-up there with staff? Like, do you leave it a couple of days? Do you say that you're going to call them? Do you book a time for them to come back in and speak about it? Like, what happens after that?
Yeah, well, if they're going to go home and think about it, I let them know. Okay, well, I'm going to be giving you a call back.
Right.
I actually tell them we're going to give you a call tomorrow to see what you decided, and we call them the next day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have the conversation over the phone.
Yeah, at that point, they're usually telling you one way or the other what's going on, and there's a 2-pronged attack on this. So if they end up saying no, one of the things I offer them, because we do motion study X-rays, and so we can say, well, what I want to do is I'm going to schedule you to come back in 4 months to see what's happened to your spine in that time without care. Which is a way to get them back in, which works wonderfully. And the other attack is using the letter that Carolyn Griffin has, which we have on our RFS stuff. Works really well in terms of getting them again maybe back on track, which you get them back in. And those are the attacks that we use.
Okay, thank you. And one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the objection I get is that they want to do it, but they didn't bring any money with them today. They didn't bring their cards with them today. Do you preload them before the second visit to say, sort of bring your money with you, sort of thing? Like, what do you do to get around that?
Well, I tell them at the end of the day one, I say, so tonight I'm going to put everything together. When I see you next time, I'm going to tell you why you have your problem, what we need to do to correct it, how long it takes, and what it costs.
Okay.
So I bring up cost at the end of day one, so they know we're going to be talking about money, and then that way they know they're going to be responsible for something if they're going to, go into care. Now I know Dan, he says to them, make sure to bring your checkbook. So whatever you're comfortable with is what you would use there.
Okay. Thank you.
But how would you handle that, Barry? If on day 2 you told them in day 1 they bring their checkbook and
and they don't.
And they still say, yeah, I want to do this, I want to commit. but I didn't double check with you.
I get some grief sometimes from chiros on this one. I take them for their word that they'll pay me the next time. So when we get to the finances and I handle the money, and let's say they have to pay $500 or whatever it is, and I just didn't bring anything with me. I'm like, that's okay. So I can let my insurance girl know, when would you like to take care of this? And I know Dan says, so I can get this off my desk. When can you take care of this?
Right.
And then you get the date. And then when you bring them up to the front desk with the calendar to set up their appointments, you'll reiterate that with the staff. So you'll say, Dane, he's going to go 3 times a week for 3 months, and he's going to take care of this $500 that he owes on Tuesday.
Perfect.
And then the front desk girl says, okay, so on Tuesday he'll take care of this. So there's this kind of this 3-way agreement going on, and then everything's handled.
Awesome. Cool. Justin Knight, can you hear me?
Hey, Justin, what's up, man?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Good. No, I don't have any questions. It all makes sense. I've been through just a 1-day intensive working on getting the second one scheduled, but with doing the day 2 with Barry. But I mean, it's great stuff. I've heard Barry speak a number of times. So
Awesome.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, bud. Captain Kirk, how you doing, buddy? Oops, I got to unmute you. Hold on. You're not unmuting for some reason, Kirk. Hold on. I don't know why you're not muted. Kirk, you're not unmuting, buddy. I don't know why. Let me try this one more time. Let's see. Kirk, if you have a question, buddy, ask it in the question box because some reason I can't unmute you. Leah Hahn, can you hear me? Leah Hahn? Leah, you're unmuted, but maybe you don't have a mic on your computer. So you can ask a question in the question dialog box as well. Lee Eckelbarger, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How you doing, pal?
Very well.
Good, man. Any questions, comments?
Sure. I guess the way we do things is a little bit different. We do a group report of findings, and then we break off with that group of 6 people, and then go over their individuals' X-rays with them, and go over their care plan, and so forth. With the 2 doctors. Then afterwards, when they make that commitment, then we send them up to the front to our, office manager who does, all the financial stuff, and she, she's the insurance expert and stuff like that, and tells them what the portion is, and blah blah blah. So we trained on closing, with her objections and so forth. But as far as obviously you guys go over the finances one-on-one, doctor-patient directly for a reason. You're going to expand on why I'm doing it wrong. How that's
I don't want to say you're doing it wrong. You do it different than what I teach. I don't like that method, but that doesn't mean you're wrong. Here's how I look at this situation. I've got someone that I get into my office, and I'm creating a relationship, and I'm creating trust, and I'm creating this bond with the patient, and I get all the way up to the part to where I have to get paid for what I do, and then what I do is I turn it over to somebody else at the most critical point of the sale. I don't understand the concept of that.
Yeah.
Why not just wrap it up and be done with it? Because if you're going to screw up the deal, it's someone else that's going to screw it up for you at this point. And we teach momentum selling, so we're creating all this momentum to the yes, and we got all this momentum going, and then all of a sudden we say, hold on, I'm going to let someone else take over now, and it really screws up the sale. It doesn't fit a true sales cycle, and it's a mistake in my opinion. But again, if that's how you do it, that's how you do it. It's just I don't do it that way.
Yeah, and I have to say, Barry, now that I've been coaching with a lot of chiropractors, I would say that people that hand off their financials to someone else have the lowest closing rates. And that I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just telling you my observation talking with a lot of chiropractors.
Well, it doesn't make sense in a sale. It
Right.
just doesn't. I get that when before I bought nicer cars, when I would buy not as nice cars, you would talk to the salesman. Next thing you know, he's gone, and you got the finance guy in there, and it's like, what just happened?
Right.
It really messes it up. It's a mistake.
Kirk, let me see. I tried to unmute you, buddy. For some reason, it's not unmuting, but I know you have a question. Patient really pushed thinking about it. I gave her a prepay or a free monthly payment option. He came in and scheduled her appointment and then told the front desk she's going to pay per visit. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's not happening. That's not our policy. We don't allow that. You can either pay it in 3 or you can pay it in 1. That's it. You can't let them run that show, because we all know if you've been in practice for any amount of time, pay as you go means they go. They don't stay. It's what they're doing is they're using you to get out of pain quickly. And the way that I like to do my practice, to me, that's not morally or ethically correct, because they could just go take an Advil and get out of pain. You know, I just don't believe in that. So in my practice, we do corrective care, and if you're going to do corrective care, you're going to either make it into 3 payments or 1 payment, and that's it. So I would take that patient back and sit down with them and say, you know, maybe we had a miscommunication, but this is how we do it. How do you want to do it? Well, I want to pay as I go. Yeah, we don't do that. So which one works best for you? Well, I want to pay as I go. Okay, great. There's a guy down the road that'll let you do that.
Right.
You know, I don't do that.
And Barry, and I don't know how you feel about this, but one of the things that I do when I'm going over my payment options, when I'm going through the prepay, I'll say something like, Barry, you know, 90% of my patients choose to pay up front because A, it gets them the biggest discount, and B, when they pay up front, they commit to their care, and they seem to get the best results.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Perfect.
So, all right. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Let me keep going. Nate Conroy. Can you hear me, buddy?
Hey, guys.
How you doing, man?
What's up, Nate?
I've been doing PhD, so I'm on the up and up with a lot of the objections and close stuff. I can tell you I got kicked in the shin probably 4 or 5 in a row with I got to go home and talk to my spouse before I got to I had gone to the boot camp and that, but you know I needed to sharpen up, and then I started doing the PhD, and I'll tell you, I mean and I can't say they all came back and closed. We definitely had a better percentage than I would have when I just sat there like Dane said and with my mouth open, like not knowing what to say.
Yeah.
Right.
Saying, okay, well, I guess that's that. I'll talk to you soon. So I told my staff too, I came out of the first one, and it just felt good to say, what's he going to say? No? I mean, just to say that, I just felt like it was back on my turf. And
Right.
the fact that whether or not she came back, at least it's like, it's my house, this is our rules. And I came out, just kind of, with a bounce in my step. And that alone, thank you, Barry, because that just feels good. And then, some of them do come back even after that, of course, because they're going to go home and talk about it. They're kind of on the hook, and you just lay it out, like you said, and they're saying, it's got to come down to the money, and then get this thing out. So that really was a big thing for us.
Nate, you hit it right on the head, too. You said, they're not all going to come back, and that's true. But like you said, more do than they used to. So that's that. It's a game. It's a numbers game, And if I can get more to come back than I used to, then I'm winning, and that's what it is. So yeah, you're looking at it exactly perfect. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Nate. We just have a couple more minutes, guys. I'm going to try to get to everybody. Ryan Hansclever, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, buddy. How you doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
Man.
What's up? Hey, I enjoyed the presentation. Barry, I was on your website looking for the boot camps for next year. Have you scheduled those yet?
Yes, we have. What do we have? We've got February in Orange County, March in Chicago. I'm trying to think the exact dates. Let me grab my phone here.
Okay.
And then we have the whole thing set up. I probably should have known that, huh? So we've got the 7th and 8th of March. We're in boot camp. I'm sorry, February. Boot camp, Orange County, and then March 28th, 29th, we're in Chicago. And then we're back in Orange County in April. And we can always plug in Phillies. Any month we want to do a Philly, we can fill that in. So I haven't talked to Dane yet about what weekends work well for him, because we like to do it by his place so people can see the 8 weeks to wellness and see that whole thing. So.
Cool. And we got to figure out.
Hey, Barry, this is Eric. I don't see the Northwest Arkansas boot camp on there anywhere.
Yeah, you might not, brother.
Packed out. We have a packed out. We'll get them packed.
Well, then you'll see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right. See you guys. Scott Hahn, can you hear me? Scott Hahn, do you have a mic on your computer, buddy? Maybe not. Let me see if you have a question here. It looks like you have a question. Love this stuff. Been using it for years, but love the exact language to continue to improve. Thanks so much for the call. You're absolutely welcome. Stevie Gervasio, can you hear me?
Hey Dane, how are you?
Good, buddy. How you doing?
Awesome. Just a lot of helpful stuff. You know, I was at the May one, and you know, after Barry spoke, I implemented a couple of them, but I realized I definitely need a 2-day to fully, implement everything. So that's my next goal for the upcoming years, to get to a 2-day and really be more efficient at the close.
Awesome. Look forward to seeing you there, man.
I just to reiterate that, guys, this will be my 3rd boot camp, and to me, learning is remembering, and there's a lot of little intricacies to the Everest systems, and so one of the things I love about it, because I love mastering something that has actually a purpose and an intent and an outcome. But usually things like that, there's an art to it, and so it's going to take time. So, I not only recommend go to boot camp, but, go back. Make sure you have specific times that you're role-playing. Denise and I literally role-play. We've created a day 1, day 2 for us, and we role-play it all the time because that's the way you learn, through role-playing, and, role-play it with your staff. So let's see if Tracy Rich, do you have any questions?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any questions for Barry, Tracy?
No, not really. I enjoyed it because this, of course, is the first time I've heard everything, and I'm really excited that all 3 of our doctors will be attending this weekend. So that will be nice to have all 3 of them there.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
But, the problem, Tracy, is I don't think they have nearly as cool an accent as you do. That's kind of a bummer,
She's from Boston. I could hear that in her voice.
And then I don't think Wes Nyberg's on. I know he's going to get to a boot camp, but he said, I have to check with my spouse. That's the most common objection that he has.
Yeah,
so I think we covered that. So, Barry, I just want to say thanks, buddy. Like I said, we owe you a debt of gratitude, because you've taught us how to take a life-saving product like 8 Weeks to Wellness and really teach us how to sell it to our patients, because again, the bottom line is we're selling something that's going to save their life, and it's just been awesome. The results with it have been great. And not only, we've been able to take it to our docs and help them with their sales of this thing we call 8 Weeks to Wellness. I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Dan. I appreciate you letting me talk to your group. It's always an amazing group, and I'll see you Thursday.
Sounds good, buddy. All right, guys.
All right, I got to go do a report. So I got a report of findings to do. Yeah. So I got a blast.
Go close them, man.
All right, buddy.
All right, guys,
and
I'll talk to you next week. This was recorded, guys. So just look. We'll post it on the Facebook page, 8WW Distributors page, if you want to go back and re-listen to it, which I would recommend. All right, guys. So have a great week. I love you guys, and we'll talk next week.